This is lesson 2 for Photoshop. In this lesson, you're going to learn about layers in Photoshop. You're going to create a layer style. You're going to make selections in various ways using the elliptical and square marquees as well as doing a quick select. You're going to do feathering. You're going to copy and paste. And then you're going to save as a JPEG and as a PNG. You'll want to first find a computer that has Adobe Photoshop CS6 installed on it. Almost all of the computers in the computer lab on the 5th floor at NIC, that's the room in which we take the lesson, have Adobe Photoshop CS6 installed. There are also 2 computers in the Learning Center on the 5th floor of the LCJ building which also have the Adobe program installed. Once you open the Adobe program, you want to check the palettes on the right side. You need to have the Layers palette open. If the Layers palette is not open, then you need to go to the Window menu in the menu bar, and then you need to go down and click on the Layers palette. The Layers palette should then open up, and if it's not in the right-hand side already, you should move it so that it's over there. We're going to be using mostly 3 tools in 4 different modes. One of the tools will be the Move tool. Another will be the Rectangular Marquee. Another mode for the Rectangular Marquee will be the Elliptical Marquee. And then finally, we're going to use the Quick Selection tool. We're also going to be looking at the toolbar, which is this strip across the top. The first step that you should take is to open the 2 photographs that I've given to you on the website. They're called wedding.jpg and puntaball.jpg. You can either do Control-O to open the documents or go to the File menu and say Open. You'll want to go to wherever you saved the photographs and then select them. You can click one, hold down the Control key, and then select another so that you select both of them at the same time. Once you've selected the 2 photographs, click Open. If you receive this error message, don't worry about it. Just click OK with the settings as they are. When the pictures open, you'll notice that there are 2 tabs that appear at the top left. These tabs allow you to select the different images. One is called Punta Ball and the other is called Wedding. The first image we're going to work with is the Punta Ball image, so click on the tab for Punta Ball. Next, we're going to be using the Rectangular Marquee tool. If it is not selected, then select it, and make sure that it is the Rectangular Marquee. When you see a button and it has this little white notch in the lower right-hand corner, that means that you can click and hold down on the button and several versions or modes for the button will appear. Make sure that you have chosen the Rectangular Marquee tool and not one of the other tools. In addition, go to the toolbar at the top and make sure that the feather is set to 0 pixels. Any other setting will not work the same way as I am showing you. Alright, so now we've got the Rectangular Marquee and it's set to 0 pixels feather. So what we're going to do is that we're going to select Punta out of this picture. You want to start someplace at the top left, above and to the left of where Punta is, and then you want to slowly click and drag and select a tall rectangular shape that has Punta roughly in the center. Don't make the selection much bigger than what I'm making it. You don't want too much space around Punta. When you have it exactly the way you want it, and your measurements may be a little different from mine, then let go. And now you have a clear selection. We're going to copy what we selected and paste it into the other image. The best ways to copy are not to right-click, but instead to either go directly to the Edit menu and then copy, or do a Control-C keyboard shortcut. Either one of these should be okay. When you've done this, go back to the wedding photo and now paste. Again, you can go to the Edit menu and you can paste, or you can just paste directly with Control-V. Now you can see that the Punta image has appeared in the middle of the wedding image. At this point, you'll want to take a look on the right side where you have the Layers palette. In the Layers palette, you'll notice that you now have two layers. One of them is the background layer, which is locked, and another is Layer 1. This is the image of Punta that you just pasted, whereas the background is the wedding picture. Notice that they both have little eyes next to them. If you click on the eye, it'll go blank, and that means that that layer has now been hidden. If you click on the eye again and again, you can make the layer appear and disappear. Again, this is what it looks like in the Layers palette. You can also make the background disappear by clicking on the eye next to that one. Make sure, of course, that both layers are indeed visible. Both eyes are visible. Also, make sure that Layer 1 has been selected, because we're about to move it in just a moment. We're going to move it using the Move tool in the top left of the Tools palette. You'll want to click on the Move tool, and now when you click and drag in this part of the image, you'll notice that you can move the location of the Punta inset. I'd like you to move this little Punta picture so that it is just below or just covering part of the top layer of the wedding cake. Now we're going to add some layer styles. Layer styles are quite complex, and we'll get into them more in the future. But in order to access layer styles, all you have to do is double-click a blank area of the layer label in the Layers palette. So I'm going to double-click right here, and now we have the layer style. When you have the layer style dialog box, you can click on any one of these effects. The first one I'd like you to click on is called Stroke. When you click on it, the stroke label should become blue, and now you should see that there is an outline or a stroke that is around your inset image. Let's make the size bigger. I'm going to make mine 20 pixels. If you can't make it exactly 20 by moving this little lever right here, you can either type 20 directly here, or you can use the up and down arrow keys on the keyboard to go up and down by an increment of 1 pixel. Make sure that the color is black. The next thing we're going to do is go down to the drop shadow. Click on that again so that you both have the check mark and that the drop shadow label is blue. And now we're going to change the angle to 145 or 145 degrees roughly. If you can't get it exactly, then close by is good enough. And then we're going to change the distance to 50 pixels. You'll notice that a shadow begins to appear here. And we're going to change the size to 100 pixels. That'll provide quite a bit of blur to the shadow, so it looks a little bit more 3D. So those are the two things I want you to do in Layer Styles, although you can see that there are a lot more things. If you accidentally do one, like Bevel and Emboss, which gives a little 3D effect, you can turn it off by just clicking on the arrow again. Once you've made the changes to the stroke, 20 pixels, black, and the drop shadow, 145 degrees, distance 50, and size 100, then go ahead and click OK. So now Punta should look like an inset. This is the first of 3 images that I'm going to ask you to save. At this point, the picture is still too large, so we would like to make it much smaller. In order to see the picture in its actual size, you can hold down the keyboard shortcut Control and 1, and you'll see the actual size of the image. It is, as you'll see, very, very large. What you'll want to do then is to change the image size. Now, before you do that, you want to make sure that your units are set correctly. So, as I showed you in Lesson 1, go to Control K, or in the Edit menu, go down to Preferences. If you go to Preferences in the menu, then you'll want to choose Units and Rulers. If you do a Control K, then the dialog box will come up and you'll want to again select Units and Rulers. Make sure that the rulers is set to pixels. If it's already set to pixels, then that's fine. But if it's not, set it to pixels and then click OK. Next, you'll want to go to the Image menu in the menu bar. You'll want to go to Image Size. In the Image Size dialog box, you'll notice that the width should be 4943 pixels and the height 3295 pixels. You'll also want to make sure that these two figures are connected by this line. This line is created by this button down here called Constrain Proportions. If Constrain Proportions is off, there will be no line, and that'll make it very hard to resize the image. So you'll want to make sure that it's constrained. Once you know it's constrained, then change the width to 1200 pixels. You'll notice that the height should also change to 800 pixels. When you've done this, click OK. You'll notice that everything, including all of the effects and both of the layers, have now resized to a much more manageable size. Next, we want to go to the File menu, and we want to Save for Web, again as we did in the first lesson. So go ahead and File menu, Save for Web. Here, you'll be able to choose, again, either JPEG, GIF, or PNG. You'll want to make sure that it's a JPEG. The quality should be high. Probably best actually to have something closer to 80%. That might change it. There we go. That's very high, actually. 80% should be fine. My image is 376.1 kilobytes. That's perfectly fine. And once you've got it set like that, go ahead and save. Make sure that you're saving it in the same place that you've got the other pictures, and make sure, of course, that you give it a completely new name. If you give it the same name as the old picture, then the old picture will be deleted when you save the new one. This one is going to be called Punta Inset.jpg. So I'm going to go ahead and save that, and that is our first image that we're going to save. Now for the next image, we're going to want to use the original wedding image. Now we've already made this image smaller, so we're going to want to close this one. When you close it, it'll ask you if you want to save the changes. Make sure you say no, otherwise this image will be saved over the original. You should see the Punta image below that, but now go to the File menu and click on Open, and reopen the wedding image. You should see the original image. You'll notice that once again, in the Layers palette, we only have the background. And this time what we want to do is that we want to select the circular marquee tool. Before we used the rectangular marquee tool, but this time we want to select the elliptical or oval one. So you'll need to click and hold down on this marquee tool, select the elliptical marquee tool, and let go. Once again, as before, you want to make sure that the feather is set to 0. Now, in this image, you'll want to surround these three people with a tall oval or ellipse. So start way up here in the top left, somewhere between this person and that person. Hey, who's that guy? So start up here somewhere, click and drag down. Now, if you make the oval or elliptical shape so that it's not perfectly centered, don't worry. Just make it the right size at first. It doesn't have to be exactly the width and height that I'm choosing here, but it should be something close. If it's off-center by any amount, you can just move the cursor inside the selection, and then you can move the selection and center it exactly as you please. Once you've done that, then again, you want to copy and paste. Again, don't right-click on the selection, but instead either do a Control-C or go to Edit and Copy. Then, when we paste it, we want to create a new image. So either do a Control-N, as in Nagoya, or go to the File menu and click on New. A dialog box will come up for the new document. Just accept the settings as they are and click OK. Now you can paste. I'm going to do a Control-V, and now you can see that we have a nice clear oval shape. It has been added as a new layer above the background, and you'll notice that we can see the white background below it. If we make the background invisible by clicking on the eye, you'll see that you get the test pattern in the back. We don't need to do that quite yet, so let's keep it like that. Now we're going to create another layer by going back to the Punta ball image. In this image, you'll recall that we made a square or rectangular marquee shape. You'll want to deselect that. If you have the marquee tool selected, then you can deselect it just by clicking anywhere else in the image outside of the selection. Alternately, you can use the keyboard shortcut Control-D. That will also deselect. Now this time we want to select Punta, but we want to select him rather carefully. There are a couple ways you can do this. You could use, for example, the lasso tool. The lasso tool allows you to draw, but as you might see by trying to do this, it's very hard to draw exactly around the part that you want. So that's not always the best way to do it. You'll notice that Punta has a nice contrast with the background here. So actually another tool is much more useful, and that is the Quick Selection tool. There's actually two tools here. One of them is the Quick Selection tool, and the other is the Magic Wand. You want to make sure that you're using the Quick Selection tool, so change it to that if the Magic Wand tool is selected. Next, you want to make sure that the selection area is reasonable. Right now, mine is set to 185. That's rather large. I want to make it much smaller, so I'm going to go down, and I'm going to change it to 20 pixels. Once I'm finished, I can hit the Enter key, and that will set it. Now I'm going to go over to Punta, and I'm going to start painting, or I'm going to click and drag inside the Punta area. Once I start doing this, you'll notice that it starts selecting Punta by the colors. Now, if I let go, you'll see that I've selected most of Punta. If you haven't selected his feet exactly, and if you've got a little extra of the background between his legs here, that's not a problem. We're not going to be using the bottom part. However, we will want to copy what we've selected. So again, either go to the Edit menu and copy, or do a Control-C. Then go to the untitled image, the one that we just made, and paste. Now you'll see that Punta appears in front of everybody. You'll want to go to the tool palette and click on the Move tool. You'll want to take a look at the Layers palette on the right and see that you've got a new Layer 2 that's got Punta in it. Make sure Layer 2 is selected, and then with the Move tool, click and drag Punta down so that he appears approximately like this, and just the lower part of his chest appears just above the bottom of the image. And that will be the second image. We're going to call this Punta Wedding. So again, we're going to go to the File menu. We're going to Save for Web. We're going to have it be a JPEG at very high quality. We're going to save it in the same place that we saved the others, but this time you can name it Punta Wedding. When you're finished, click Save, and now you've saved this image. Now I'd like to show you one other feature, and that's called feathering. So let's go back to the wedding, And let's select the elliptical marquee again. And let's deselect what we selected before. Again, either click out here or, as I'm about to do right now, type Control D, and that will deselect what you selected before. Now that we've selected the elliptical marquee, go up to where it says Feather, and this time change the feather to 20 pixels. After you've typed that in, hit Enter. The box should turn black, and now that's the setting for the feather. Just as you did last time, make a tall oval shape around these three people. Again, if you don't center it correctly the first time, don't worry. You can always move it around. And then again, copy. You'll want to deselect. And just to experiment, try pasting here. I'm going to paste, and now you can see that a copy of that part of the picture has appeared, but notice the edge. It is no longer a very sharp edge. It's now what we call a feathered edge. So this is now much more interesting, much softer around the edges. That's the effect that we're looking for. So once again, create a new document. Accept the settings as they appear. Click OK. And again, paste. And now you'll see that the picture comes up again, but this time with the feathered edge, the much softer edge. Go up to the Layers area, and in Layers, make the background so that it does not appear. Again, you'll see this checkerboard pattern. The checkered board pattern is kind of like an indicator, and it says basically that there is no image in this area. This area, this part of the image, will appear transparent. Now we're going to save it for web. So go to the File menu and go to Save for Web. When you have a transparent part of the image, a JPEG will not show the transparency. If you make a JPEG, then the transparent area will simply fill in with a color like white. So this time we're going to want to make a PNG, and we're going to want to make it a PNG 24. A PNG 8 would not have a feathered edge, but a PNG 24 will. So the PNG 24 should appear, after a moment, to have the nice feathered edge. It appears as a test pattern now, but if you use it with another image in the future, this part of this image will be transparent. So now let's save it as a PNG 24. Again, save it on the desktop. You'll notice that the other images don't appear, but only because we're now saving as a PNG, and this is only showing PNG images, and I don't have any more, just these folders. So I'm going to save it, and this time I'm going to save it as softwedding.png. And then I'm going to click Save. There we go. That's it. From here, follow the instructions that I've given to you on the instruction sheet for saving the images. They should be saved in specific folders, which you can then place in your project set. And that's all for Lesson 2.